Good evening. I'm Karen Taylor, Program Director of the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen of the City of New York, and I'm delighted to welcome you all here this evening. This would, of course, include our in-person audience and our online audience for tonight's special program, The Silent Film Universe, Exploring Silent Movies. And presenting this will be our film historian, accompanist, and presenter, Ben Modell. This is our final talk for 2025, and what a terrific way to end the season. We have another special West 44th Street display window to celebrate tonight's program by Thomas Donoghue, who is our artistic curator. The window for the silent film universe. It's absolutely spectacular, and I recommend it for our in-person audience to have a look when you leave this evening. And it's just amazing what you can do, well, if you're Thomas Donoghue, with, yes, as I hope I said, our artistic curator, it is amazing what he can do with 2 rolls of paper and an Amazon box. So you'll have, yes. So please have a look when you leave. Now, I also want to mention that we have an additional reason to thank Thomas tonight, as it was at his suggestion that we introduced to the many talents of Ben Modell. I want to mention that this lecture tonight is inspired and based on this book, and it just so happens it is for sale for our in-person audience and our online audience. You can purchase it through www.silentfilmmusic.com. I also just want to say a quick word. We have a technical director who sometimes gets thanked at the end, but not always. But, you know, we would not be able to do these lectures without our wonderful technical director, Angelo Vigorito. So I want to express our appreciation to him. And indeed to our online coordinator, and that would be Meg Stanton. Thank you. Yes, thank you. For those of you who may be less familiar with the General Society, a brief introduction. The General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen of the City of New York was founded in 1785, and that is 240 years ago. Today, our organization continues to serve and improve the quality of life for the people of the City of New York through our various cultural and educational programs. These include our Locke Museum, which you're welcome to visit after tonight's talk, our tuition-free Mechanics Institute, which is just finishing its fall semester, and students are taking exams upstairs at this very moment. Our library, of course, for which our in-person audience is here tonight, and finally, our lecture series. A lecture series that started in 1837, so we're very proud to be continuing that tradition. Ben Modell accompanies silent films on piano and theatre organ regularly at MoMA, the Library of Congress, the Silent Clowns film series, and at many theatres and schools around the United States and internationally. Over the past 44 years, he has created and performed several hundred live scores for silent films. His composed silent film scores are performed regularly by orchestras and concert bands around the United States and Canada. His recorded scores can be heard on numerous releases from Kino Lorber, Milestone Films, and Turner Classic Movies, and from his own boutique Blu-ray label, Undercrank Productions. Mr. Modell is a visiting professor of film at Wesleyan University, where he teaches silent film history. More information, forget that because I don't have a point in giving you the link, but Ben is going to provide you with more information. Yes. It is such a pleasure, because this really is going to be a wonderful program, and having had a sneak preview of some of the film clips and the piano music, we are so thrilled that Ben can be here to speak this evening. So thank you, Ben.
Thank you, thank you. With that build-up, I'm glad I showed up. Thanks for coming to the program tonight, and thanks for zooming along. I'm looking into the camera. So hello. Welcome, and thanks for being here at the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen of the City of New York, or GSMT. I'm so glad to be here, and I want to thank Karen, Angelo, Victoria, and Thomas, and everyone here on staff for making so much happen. Oh, if you go out and make a right, you'll see the display that Thomas has put together. And one of the things that really impressed me is that, and for those of my film friends will notice this, is that the movie camera, the hand-crank movie camera that he built and sculpted that's in the display is accurate. Usually when these things happen, it's a projector that's upside down, and the take-up reel is in the wrong place, and the lens is in the back. It looks, I saw it, that's a Mitchell from night, you know. So it's really a wonderful, wonderful exhibit. It's fantastic. So. Yeah, hats off to you. Okay, well, I could probably dispense with half of the first card because you just covered some of it, but my name is Ben Modell. I'm a silent film accompanist, historian, and presenter, and educator. Like you said, this is what I do full-time. I accompany silent films. I create and perform live musical accompaniments for movies made before 1930 on piano and theater organ. And do some orchestral work as well. Schools, universities, historic theaters, somebody wants to turn off the lights and show an old movie, I'm there. I've been teaching at the Wesleyan University as a visiting for the last 10 years or so. A lot of what I do involves film programming, and as well my home video label, Undercrank Productions. Over the last 12 years, we've spent a lot of time working with film archives and film collectors to restore and release the undiscovered gems of silent film. The big companies, Criterion, they can do Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and Harold Lloyd. We work on films starring people like Marion Davies and Marcel Perez and Raymond Griffith, and even silent movies with Edward Everett Horton. But we're filling out the landscape for everybody else. But this is what I do. The book, The Silent Film Universe, is not a film history book. It's not about the silent film era and different studios and stars and different films. And it's not about, I don't discuss the accompaniment of silent films. In it, that's its own topic in itself. And if you are interested in learning more about the theories and techniques and practices of film accompaniment, I encourage you to listen to my podcast, which is called, of all things, the Silent Film Music Podcast with Ben Modell. Episode 71 dropped yesterday, and you'll get to hear some examples of accompanying Phantom of the Opera during Halloween season. So the silent film universe is how I refer to the immersive and dreamlike experience of watching silent movies. There is something about this experience that we go on ourselves that enables silent film to engage and entertain audiences, both of the 19-teens and 20s and of people today. And I think I figured out how that works. And that is what's in the book. And so tonight what we'll do is I'll talk about some of the basic facets of what I call the silent film universe and what it is, and with some demonstrations which we'll screen on the screen and which I'll accompany at the piano over here. The year is 1929. It's a big year, and this is the year that finally, after years and years of experiments that have failed and fits and starts, sound has finally come to movies. We can now hear what everybody is saying. And thanks to the technological advances where there's now amplification, microphones are possible, and we can have synchronized sound with film. And it also means that movies that were just called movies for 30, 35 years have to be called something else, because we now have sound, and it is at this point that anything that came before 1929 is referred to as silent movies. However, sound film is not just adding sound and dialogue to movies. It's not like suddenly unmuting the television after 20 years. It's a lot more, because with sound film, whether it's movies from 1929, 1930, all the way up to anything you see in the theater, online, on your phone today, with sound film, most of the information and storytelling comes from dialogue and the soundtrack. And with silent film, it came from two places, one of which is the screen, where we are given visual cues, not absolutely everything, but just enough, and the rest of it we provide ourselves through our right brain and our imagination, and we're never aware it's even happening. So what is a silent film? How many of you have seen a silent film, not just a clip, how many have not seen a silent film before at all? Okay, how many of you have seen a silent film with live musical accompaniment? Okay, most of you, that's good. How many of you just want to show off range of motion? Okay, good, okay, that's good. Good, PT is a wonderful thing. I'd like to start off just to orient all of you, and for those of you who haven't seen films, and for anyone here or at home, by showing you a short film. It's a comedy, it's about 10, 11 minutes long, and it really gives you, it's a great example of what the silent film universe is about, in terms of the kinds of things you can do in a silent film that you can't do in a sound film. So I'm going to come over here. And this is a film from 1923. It's called It's a Gift from 1923, made at the Hal Roach Studios and starring a comedian named Snub Pollard. I will be playing in my original score, which I will be making up right now. I'll be improvising the score, which is one of the ways films were accompanied. If you were a soloist, you had that luxury. If you were an orchestra, you worked from a score that was compiled at your theater. The scoring happened at every theater. It happened by the conductors and musicians out at every single theater and not from the studios. So here is It's a Gift. So that is a silent film. And pretty much nothing that we just saw, not one shot, could be done in a sound film today. From the fact that he's driving a car shaped like a bullet or a suppository, that it's stowed in a garbage can that functioned as a garage because of 2 letters. The fact that that magnet is so strong and it pulls them anywhere, the gag with the map that the car, of course, did not go from California to New York in 4 seconds, and the entire sequence with the inventions that wake up Snub Pollard. Although I have to imagine Tim Burton and Paul Rubens saw that because it looks just like the opening of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. And the fact that the car just sprouts wings and takes off and flies away like he's 007. It's almost a cartoon logic. And the thing is that we engage with this immediately, and we don't question any of it. We don't ask to have any of it justified, and we can leap from one thing to another, and we're on the ride. And this happens instantly. And that's really what silent film can do, and sound film doesn't quite do. So what is the silent film universe? And this is a term that I've come up for this universe, this altered state that kind of looks like our own life, but not really. So the first key elements, and these are built into the format of what film was when motion pictures began, was the silence, the lack of color, and the speed up, as you notice. And I'll talk more about that later. And these things on the surface may be perceived as handicaps or issues that might be a problem, and they are actually assets. Because these things are missing, we instantly connect, and we're able to dive right in. And without even being aware of it, we compensate for that, and we engage in this sort of dreamlike state. There is let's see, is this the 6, 7? There's also, as we see, there's a visual language that prompts and gives us prompts, not spelling out absolutely everything, but just enough. And by our watching this and taking this in, and our right brain, what we call our right brain, engages with this. Other laws of this silent film universe that come about because of this is that, first of all, in the storytelling, there is no wasted screen time. There's no long, lingering shots panning across a countryside, up the side of a building, across highways or anything. We're constantly being fed something that keeps us engaged. Logic and consequence can pretty much be dispensed with to a certain extent, but not only in terms of with comedies, where you had this freedom to do things like that, but even with dramas, where it allowed for story leaps to happen, and we just go along with it. There's these prompts that we get are in the form of titles. There's very light gesturing. It's not like charades or anything like that. And the intertitles that we see, they're not used like closed captioning. Every once in a while, a title will come up just to bridge one sequence into another, or if somebody says something, it'll be boiled down to a 7 or 8 word title. It's just enough, and it's all we need to understand what's going on, and we don't have to have absolutely everything explained to us. Now, we don't know how this happened, because until around 1909, most film was cameras pointed at actors and no editing. People would enter, they would mouth things, point at each other, gesture, and the scene would play out, and they would leave the shot, and then we would cut to the next thing. You'd have a title card that would explain everything that's going to happen, and then we would watch it play out. But it wasn't planned. It's what I think of as the Big Bang of the development of film language that happened around 1909, 1910, until maybe 1913 or 14. Film directors like D.W. Griffith and Thomas Ince and Lois Weber and many others were making films that were a single reel, which lasted 12 to 14 minutes. This is the time before feature films, where a typical film program would be 5 or 6 or 7 of these, what we would now call short films, in a rotation. And the demand of our product was such that these film directors each of them would be making 1 or 2 films every single week. Each of the distributors, and there were many of them, were releasing a few films almost every single day. So there was a time when, because of this cauldron of production, there was room for people to make mistakes, have happy accidents, try things, show things in a different way, experiment with putting cameras in different places, leaving things out, and maybe they left something out because they forgot to show it, and then they realized, oh, we don't need to explain everything. But this all happens very quickly in a 2 or 3 years, and then gradually, what happens is once this sort of locks in and we move into feature length in the mid-teens, film directors and people making movies gradually leave more and more out and find more and more expressive and even visually poetic ways of suggesting things to the audience, where the audience, because what we're doing, and again, we're not even aware we're doing it or that it's happening, we are bringing what we know from our own life experience up into the screen to fill in the rest, so that we don't have to have everything explained to us and we can understand what's happening. I'm going to show you a clip now from we're going to skip to 1926 and the Soviet Union. This is from a film called Mother, directed by Vsevolod Pudovkin. And this is a film I show my students every year. And I want you to take a look at this. It's the first 4 minutes of the film. And typically a silent film will have its opening credits, and then there'll be 1 or 2 title cards that set up where we are, who everybody is, and just to give us sort of a once upon a time kind of a title card. However, this film does not. It just after its title sequence, it just begins. I'm going to move over to the piano now. So just spin around. What I want you to so this is it's a darker film. Not just the first few shots are dark, but this is a darker storyline. But I want you to well, and just let yourself go and enjoy it. But what we're seeing here is the simplicity of what the visual cues that we're being given, and yet without a lot of information, we completely understand who the people are, what is going on, and what the conflict is. First couple of shots are a little dark. It's a night exterior outside a pub where an old man is ejected. Thank you. You notice the simplicity of the performances. It's very simple. And there's hardly any titles, and the titles that we get are mother, father. And yet we go along with the story. You maybe felt yourself in this almost trance-like state that happens once you get sucked in to what's happening. And even something like the reason it's never explained, why does he take that iron and stick it in his pocket? It's not until maybe 2 or 3 minutes into the next scene where he enters another pub and puts the iron on the counter and wants to trade it for vodka, that we understand why it's happened. But we know all we need, just knowing who these people are and who they are to us. And you also notice that while there is a conflict and they're interacting with one another, they don't speak. You may not even have been aware of it, but you definitely feel that what the conflict is that's going on here. And you may have sensed the same thing with the Snub Pollard comedy once it got going. But this is the kind of thing and the kind of storytelling that can happen in the silent film universe, and it's something that really made it a universal language. So we went from an American slapstick comedy to something made in Russia, and we had absolutely, no trouble understanding what was going on. So my book, The Silent Film Universe, and how did it come about? I've been accompanying films for decades, and I get asked many, many times over and over a number of things by interviewers, radio hosts, podcasters, bloggers, journalists. In addition to the usual questions, don't your hands get tired? Was that the original score, and how'd you get started? I kept getting asked, well, why do you think people like silent movies? And I did my darndest to answer, but I myself didn't know why it is that people kept coming, and why, when I showed silent films and accompanied them to audiences of all ages and cultures, it still worked. And over the next several years, and many years, I became more mindfully aware of what was happening for the film and for the audience, because my job as an accompanist is not to merely match music to what's happening on screen or to mirror it, but to underscore it and support anything that maybe isn't there or the audience might need to know, whether it's just a matter of letting people know this is a funny scene, or to help optimize and enhance something that's happening emotionally. But I am going on the ride with the film. I'm going on the ride with the audience, and I'm going on the audience's ride with the film. So I'm trying to have an empathic understanding of what the audience is, and that's why I began understanding that silent film isn't just a medium that is purely visual, just purely visual, but involves us. And I began developing a number of different theories about the different aspects of silent film language that enabled this, that allowed us to fill in what wasn't there without us even being aware of it. And so, and there were certain things that I discovered that I was, that may have been known, and there was one thing in terms of the speed that I'm going to get to in a little bit, that nobody had ever figured out before. And I began processing these and introducing them into my film introductions. When I was hired by Janine Basinger and Scott Higgins at Wesleyan University, Janine had started the film department at Wesleyan University in the late 1960s, and then ran the program and was the chairperson. And then she retired a few years ago, and Scott Higgins, who is now the department chair, the two of them asked me to create and teach a course on silent film, one which they also wanted me to accompany on piano. And I thought, first of all, thank you. I wasn't really looking to begin teaching, but I thought, well, I'm not as book smart as a lot of the other film professors whose classes I've played for. I'm not steeped in film theory, not interested in a lot of it, and I don't have a PhD in cinema studies. What can I offer? And what I realized is the one thing I did know about silent film was this understanding of film language and how it interacts with the audience. And so that became the backbone of my class. And so what we do every year from the end of January to early May as we watch silent films from those years chronologically and chart the development of film language, not just the language itself, but the different ways in which more and more as the 1920s go on, more and more of the storytelling happens out here. To the point where in the late 20s there are films with almost no storyline whatsoever, or films like Lady Windermere's Fan, directed by Ernst Lubitsch, which for the most part is all about us watching people trying to figure out what the other person is trying to do. It's all getting inside the heads of people and what they're thinking and what they're understanding. The next step was that in 2021, I was looking for a subject to do a blog series on. I had been listening to a couple of marketing podcasts, Marketing Without the Marketing from Michael Bosey and Akimbo from Seth Godin. And inspired by these two, I wanted to write and post to my blog every day, every couple of days, and I needed a topic. And I decided to take these understandings that I had about silent film and just do that. And sort of barfed out all these ideas, and the response that I got from people who subscribed to my blog and saw these from social media was very positive. And I thought, well, between my students and this, I may very well be on to something here. And when I finished, I had about 65 blog posts, and that became draft one of what is now the Silent Film Universe, the book. So one of the, as I mentioned, one of the things that I discovered that nobody else has ever picked up on is this magic of the sped up world of the silent film universe. And what I figured out is that people knew this was happening in theaters when they were making the films. It wasn't a mistake. The films are not meant to be shown slower. I kept finding evidence that here are the running speeds, and here there's an interview that was done with Charlie Chaplin's cameraman, Rolling Tothero, where he says this is what speed we did for this and what speed we did for that. And there's a difference. It's always a little faster. And the people on set understood this. There's an actor named Maurice Costello who figured it out in 1908, 1909. He gave an interview in 1914-15 about this, where he just, again, because this cauldron of production, so much film was being made, he thought, well, I tell you what, on this next film, I'm just going to move a little slower and see what happens. And what happened was it had a huge effect. All of a sudden, he didn't look like he had had way too much coffee when the films were being shown. And this became a method of acting that people took on, because movie theater owners, with these programs of films that were 5 or 6 one-reel shorts, they were in a rotation. If you ran the films faster, the films wouldn't take as long, and you could fit in an extra show at the end of the day. And people on set, in some cases, were rehearsing with a stopwatch, because they were very mindful of how much film they were using, because it costs money. And you can't tell the theater owner, well, run the film slower and sell less tickets, and you can't tell the film production people, well, crank faster to keep up with the theaters, because it'll cost more. And at some point in the early 19-teens, it just stuck that way. Actors had this in their bones from spending so many years playing to huge, huge houses where their physical movements had to read at the back of a 2,000-seat house. So moving a little bit more slowly, putting little pauses in that would get erased. It's sort of like, if you ever watch a TED Talk, it seems like everyone giving a TED Talk speaks as if they're expecting people to watch it at 1.5 speed. And it's the same idea, and this just became part of the language. So, in addition to, I found a couple of articles. There's Maurice Costello, and there's another movie star named Milton Silves who wrote an article for the Encyclopedia Britannica that was published in 1928, where he spells out exactly what I'm talking about. So we have this otherworldliness of the movement where it's faster, but it doesn't look like it's too fast. So this is between this and the absence of sound and color. It resembles real life, but it isn't real life. And this is the other thing that came in with sound. which is that with sound, which sound film, which really solidified in terms of the technology in 1925-26. The cameras and the projectors all now had to run at the exact same speed. So you were now watching film that was in theaters shown at the same speed it was filmed at. And between that and hearing people, that's what let the air out of the balloon for silent film. It wasn't just that we were, oh great, now we have sound. But I believe that silent film is its own medium. It's not necessarily, while it is chronologically earlier, it's thought of as early film, but it is its own medium. And I think it is still valid today if it's spoken properly. There's a chapter at the end of my book called So You Want to Make a Silent Film, where I talk about just some of the basics and the things that people sometimes get wrong. But this is what is so wonderful about silent film, and this is why even today, whether I'm doing a show for fourth graders in the Upper East Side, sixth graders in Tromsø, Norway, at a festival I used to play at, or in front of an audience of 3,000 people in South Korea, the films still work. There's something universal about the human equation that is expressed in silent film, and it removes all barriers, and it allows people making the films to make any kinds of stories and told in any way they can, because the laws of the natural laws of the silent film universe do not necessarily adhere to reality. And to close out, I want to show you something that is just a brilliant example of something that can only exist in this world of silent film. I'm going to go over to the piano. This is the last 2 or 3 minutes from a film called 1 Week with Buster Keaton, directed by Buster Keaton. In the film, for those of you who don't know it, since we're not going to watch the first 17 minutes of it, Buster and his new bride are given a house that is a modular home as a wedding present. Somebody pranks them and changes the numbers on all the boxes, and being Buster Keaton, he assembles it anyway, and the house is built, and it looks something like if Salvador Dali had worked for IKEA. By the end of the film, on the 7th day of the film, Buster and his wife have been told, oh, you've built your house on the wrong lot. It's supposed to be across those railroad tracks over there. And so we are now going to see Buster and Sybil Seeley deal with moving their house. And the closing gag is one of the great examples of something that can only happen in the silent film universe, which involves sound, whether it exists or not. Okay, yeah, can you, roll it. Thank you very much. You know, both trains made the same amount of sound, but that second one just comes out of nowhere. And one of the things I watched, that whole film is one of my go-to films to show people who haven't seen silent film before. I imagine many of you have seen the film. In watching it over and over and over, one of the things I love in that very last shot is the way Buster remembers the directions. It's a big old wide shot and just sticks his butt out, because that's the directions are in his back pocket. He doesn't go, hey, wait a second. You know, just does a little thing like this and then puts the directions down. And so that's the end of that part of our talk tonight. We have a little time for question and answers, both from here, and I know that there are folks who are Zooming along with us who may be putting things in the chat, and someone's going to be texting Karen some of the questions, and as long as they're relevant, we'll try to accommodate all of them. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Well, first of all, let's acknowledge your wonderful talk.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I forgot. Thank you. Thank you. I forgot to say, would you like to applaud for me? Yes.
Can you wait until the mic comes
good.
over? Okay.
Good. Here we go. Sound. Here we go.
Ironic, but yes, we need it.
Yes.
Many years ago, I think in the 70s, Museum of Modern Art showed silent films, silent, with no music. And then they would have, one day would be with an accompanist and another day without, and of course without. Nobody came and they were terrible. And of course silent films back in the day were never ever silent.
Right.
But I think the greatest silent film I ever saw was Ben-Hur. Do you have any comment on it?
Sure. Yes, this was the practice at MoMA for many years, that they would show every film twice, and there would be live accompaniment, usually by William Perry. You probably got to hear Bill Perry, who is 94 and sharp as a tack, and I stay in touch with him. And then the repeat showing would have no sound, no accompaniment whatsoever. And that's kind of how I got into film accompaniment in college, because they were showing the films silent, because this is before home video, and I thought, I don't know what I'm doing, but it's got to be better than nothing. Ben-Hur is a great film, and I think the Chariot Race in the silent version is even better than the one in the sound edition. And again, it may very well be because of this being able to because we're inhabiting the silent film universe, there are things that you can depict and tension and release you can create visually through editing that affects us. And with a sound film, you have to justify everything, the horse's hooves and going around the turn, because we're seeing, it's Technicolor and widescreen. So we're being presented with a replica of reality to a certain extent, where with silent film, you have the luxury of altering time and things like that. So I think that it is a great film, and I hope somebody shows it again soon. Yeah, thanks. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I just want to, as I go over to the next questioner, I want to remind our online audience that you can text questions to Meg, and she will text them to me.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, thanks for your talk.
Yeah.
So am I right in that the central years for U.S. silent films feature length would be between 1915 and 1927 with The Jazz Singer? I know after that there still were some silent films like Charlie Chaplin. But so my question to you is, roughly, and just speaking of like American and feature length, roughly how many films were made in this period, and how many, because I know you do preservation work too, how many are like still preserved? And what's a good way, like just for us in the audience, to kind of like see some of these less famous silent films? Okay.
I could give you an exact number of films that were, no, I have no idea. I mean, it's tons and many, and it's a lot. It's a lot. And really the last year of silent film is 1929. The Jazz Singer is actually a silent film. It has a musical score, and it's undercranked. And I think one of the genius bits of casting is that Al Jolson looks like he's undercranked. When you see him do toot-toot-toots, he's bouncing all over the place. But really, it isn't full 100% sound doesn't really kick in until 1929. That's the big transition year. A study was done about 12 years ago, reaching out to film archives around the planet as a survey of all the feature-length films that were made in the United States, and to understand how many of them survived, because there's always numbers that get thrown around, and I think 70% are missing. I think, or survive, or something like that. But there is this study, and then there are a lot. But the other piece of that, there are many feature films that survive, but reels 4 and 5 are missing, or the beginning is missing, or we only have reels 7 and 8. So, in addition to complete features that survive, and things turn up every year, as much as there are things that are lost. Not only in film, there are two ways. The films will turn up in attics and basements and barns and stuff like that. And there are films, there's so much film in every single film archive, not only in the US, but abroad, because a lot of silent films survive only in copies at Gus Filmofund in Russia or in the Czech Film Archives, because these films, you just change the title and you can ship them overseas. That was the end of the line. So at the end of the line, you're going to send that back. And so these films only survive overseas. So there's so much film, and some of it's unidentified, but there aren't enough archivists to wind through absolutely everything. And there are collections that turn up where, oh my gosh, there's all this film that was lost and now it's in this collection. If you've ever heard of a guy named Al Detlef, it's a guy named Al Detlef who found the 1903 Frankenstein that was made by the Edison Studios, and for years he wouldn't let anybody see it, and he wanted to be given an Academy Award for having it. He wouldn't let it. He would charge people $1 million, it's so much money, and then eventually he passed away, and his children found the house and all the film, and it got donated to the Library of Congress. And my friends like George Willeman, who's the Nitrate Vault leader, they're going through this collection, and oh my God, it wasn't just Frankenstein. There's nothing super famous, but just winding through things. Oh my goodness, this now exists. So it's hard to pin down a specific number. And then you asked about preservation. There some films haven't been preserved. They're in archival vaults, but that costs a lot of money. And not the Library of Congress has its own film lab, but most film archives in the U.S. do not. And they have to fundraise for preservation. And some things are easier to fundraise for than others. You know, a Marcel Perez comedy is harder to fundraise for than a Garbo film, let's say, that's turned up. So there's all of that. And then access and getting things out to people. There's a lot of different factors, but there's a lot. The short answer is there's a lot. And some of it's a lot, and there's a good deal of it that's missing, but it's around. Yes, Karen, you're gonna pick people then.
Ben.
Yes.
No, actually, John, just because for their online audience.
Oh yeah, so the folks at home can hear John.
Ben, would you talk just very briefly along these lines about the Smithsonian showing of clips of films where archivists like you will go and look at a clip and say, oh, I know that one. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. John is talking about something that, a film identification conference that used to happen during the 2010s called Mostly Lost. It stopped around the time of COVID. It hasn't restarted yet. But this was almost like a nerd sport. We would gather people every year for 3 or 4 days at the Library of Congress's Packard Campus Theater in Culpeper, Virginia, where the film vaults are. And we would screen films that had been preserved, but we don't know what it is. Often, the heads and tails of a reel of film are the things that will decompose first. So we don't know what it is, and so we put it on screen, and mics would be passed around, and people would look for different things, and also where people are looking things up on their laptops, calling us stuff. Oh, I know that windmill is in New Jersey, and that's an automobile. You know, you look. One of the things we look for are calendars. So we see a calendar on the back of this set that says, let's say it says December 4th, and it's a Thursday. Okay, well, somebody would look at what year is this? Okay, now we have a year, and then do the trees look like they're from the West Coast or the East Coast? And we know what the production company is. But it was thrilling, actually. It's a lot of fun. We try to see if we could figure out what the film was by the time it ended or crashed, is the term we use, because it would just abruptly end because the film would be done. And we haven't found a lost Buster Keaton film or anything, but it was just this fun thing. And I know this year at the Pordenone Silent Film Festival in Italy, they had a couple of sessions like that. I don't think they were as fun as what we did at Mostly Lost. But this is another way films will turn up. Oh, that's what this is. Yeah.
It seems to me there's sort of a built-in contradiction. On the one hand, with silent films, you have that surrealistic world, but at the same time, they developed the techniques of filmmaking with really depicted reality in the best way. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, in the first few years of sound film, people realized they had to go back and take more of the techniques from the silent film to move things forward.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. And the stereotype with early sound film is often it's very stagey and boring, but there were directors like Roland West and King Vidor who said, yeah, well, we just move the camera. If you get to see a film called The Bat Whispers, which was actually a remake of a film called The Bat, which my company restored and released last year, the film that inspired Batman. You see The Bat Whispers, the camera is moving all over the place. There's cut. You would never know that something that is as stagey as some of the other films were happening. So they had to everybody had to relearn everything. But what stopped was the kind of comedy that we're seeing, the universality of any kind of a story, and action stars like Tom Mix or Douglas Fairbanks were they couldn't make the same kind of films anymore. And the atmosphere on set was also different because people were playing music, mood music on the set. They would be hammering and sawing set pieces for the next thing. The director might be coaching them verbally through a scene. And all of a sudden when sound comes in, you have to memorize lines, you have to hold your breath, you can't breathe, you can't do anything, and the vibe was very different. And a lot of people who had been in films for 8, 9, 10 years, it was enough. I had a nice career, I can't handle the change, and they just got out of it and moved, let's say, behind the camera or got married and had families. But there is a definite shift in the language. And like you said, film language, basically, there really isn't anything that was developed new once sound comes in. All the basic building blocks of cinema are there. Yes.
I got the mic right here. Hello, sir, over here.
Okay.
Great presentation, by the way. Thank you so much. I went to the American Society of Cinematographers Master's course a couple years ago. It was like 1 week long, cost a lot of money and all that. But anyway, they talk about lighting. Lighting has evolved, as you know, over the decades. So what was it like in the silent film areas? Did they know about temperatures and all that, or what can you say? Yeah,
so as far as lighting, there's two things that I've learned. One of them is that the film stock that they're using was orthochromatic, so it doesn't register the color red. So anything that is red appears very dark, which is why a lot of the actors have pancake white on. The comedians were used to that, and if you watch some silent films and you see a good print, and they turn to the side, there's a line right here where Harry Langdon's makeup stops. Why I have no idea. That was one issue. The film was not very sensitive to light, so you had to either be outdoors or have a lot of electric light. But a gentleman named Carl Malkins, whose father was a film cinematographer in the silent film era, and Carl Malkins did a lot of the film restorations that were shown on public television in the 1970s, and he himself was a cinematographer. And what he's told me is that nobody had light meters. They didn't have a light meter, but they just got used to, okay, well, it's this bright out, and the film stock is this sensitive, so this is the f-stop that we're going to use. They just knew. And if you look at the cameras, and there are actually there are photographs of two different cameras in the book, and the only thing on there are dials that indicate footage of how much film you've exposed or haven't. And so these were challenges for people. And films from the teens are typically, even the interiors are taken on a shooting stage that's outdoors with muslin draped overhead to diffuse the light. And that's why you'll see films from the teens where they're indoors, but the tablecloth is waving like crazy. You can't light a candle. And gradually more and more studios began using, incandescent light to light their films.
And sir, just a second question real quick. Do you think a silent movie in today's day could be a fluke and win the Academy Awards? Is it possible?
Well, it has. There's a film called The Artist that was released about 12 years ago. And the strange thing about The Artist is that on the one hand, it won an Oscar, the score won an Oscar, a lot of people saw The Artist. It was everywhere, and that's great. And many of us silent film fans thought, oh boy, people have seen a silent movie now. And for the next year or two, at shows I would ask during a Q&A, I'm just curious, how many of you saw The Artist and decided you wanted to see more silent movies? And 0 hands went up. And I took that in, and I think part of the issue is while the film is very well made, and it does strongly resemble a late 1920s silent film, because it is set in the 1920s, it's more of a novelty. I do think that a silent film that takes place today with today's story iconography and plot lines and things that people need or get in trouble over can work without resorting to 100-year-old story tropes. It's definitely possible, and there have been various attempts. Mel Brooks' silent movie it is a movie with no sound, and it has title cards. But Mel Brooks actually said, a friend of mine actually knows Mel and asked him on my behalf, why is it that you made silent movie in color and without the undercranking? And he said, I didn't want to make a silent film. I wanted to make my version of a silent film. And so, of course, half of the gags in silent movie are about the fact that the film doesn't have any sound. Everybody knows the gag with Marcel Marceau, who speaks the only line in the film. There have been attempts. I think Sidewalk Stories is another one made in the 1980s, but again, it doesn't. It is set in contemporary times, but because nobody knew about the undercranking thing. That's the one thing that that film and others may be missing. But I think that, like any kind of language, if you know it and you speak it properly, I think a silent film could be made today, and they would absolutely work. And that's what I hope to begin doing tests of next year.
Ben?
Yes.
Are you able to take a few more questions?
I am. Do we have anybody from our Zoomers?
I have one here, but maybe we'll just take 2 more questions.
That's
after
fine.
this gentleman.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and I'll let you select who the next two people will be. But first of all, we're going to talk.
Okay. All right.
Hello.
Well, you're back first.
I have a question about the speed of the films that you mentioned.
Sure.
Was that a uniquely American technique, or like if I was in 1917 in Japan and watching a silent film, would they have also been speeding up the film?
I've noticed this. There's one of the great film directors from Japan, Yasujiro Ozu, started in the silent film era. And his films, he makes silent films into the mid-30s. Sound comes in later in Japan and in Asia because in Japan, their films were accompanied by not only music, but someone called a benshi, or a film narrator, who would stand next to the screen and narrate the film, do voices and sound effects. And there are people still practicing that today. And every year there's a tour of a couple of benshis who come through, and they've done shows at the Film Forum. But when I watch the Ozu films, I realized, they look exactly like an American film. There were differences in terms of average projection speed. In France, it was a little slower, closer to 20, 21 frames per second on average, whereas here, the average was really around 24 frames per second, which is, even for video, it's a standard. By the end of the silent film era, films are being shown closer to 28 frames per second. But in Germany, they're being shown at 30. I've seen the first page of the score for Metropolis, and it indicates 28/29 frames per second. If you've seen Metropolis and you think some of the scenes are running fast, you're watching them too slow. There was a range of it, but absolutely, this was something that was ubiquitous with silent film. Again, because it would cost more if everybody shot at 24 frames per second to keep up. So yeah, that's pretty standard for everything. Do we have anybody from the online, any of our Zoomers who has a question?
The online audience have said it's terrific, but they're quiet on the question front.
Okay, well, that's fine. Well, thank you very much.
So
yeah, they'll text me later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yes, over here? Yes.
Thank you. You mentioned that they didn't produce scores and that everybody made their own scores. Have you been collecting written scores, and is there an archive or demand for that?
Yes. I have some of the music. So basically what happened, starting from 1915, the major music publishers hired about a dozen or so composers to create fake classical music. So classical music, the music everybody already had, the mood would change. But if you had a love scene that lasted a minute and a half, you needed a love theme that would last a minute and a half. And so they would create pieces of music that sounded like classical music where the mood would not shift. And you would buy a folio of 15 or 12 of these different moods, something that you could score anything with. And every movie theater would accumulate a library of all of this music. And these scores, they do survive. There are a number of special collections around the country that have them. The New York Public Library for the Performing Arts at Lincoln Center has a collection of about 800 of these music cues from the Capitol Theater, one of the biggest theaters here in New York City. There are collections in Colorado and other special collections of libraries. A lot of the music was not only acquired by, but survives because they were acquired by women who were film accompanists. Because in 1918, when the Great War is raging and all the men are shipped off to war, there is now an opportunity for women who can play the piano or the organ to work in cinemas. And they would have to buy a lot of their own music. And so some of the collections that survive are steamer trunks that grandma has in the attic that will turn up. And it is one of the things I know about this, and I've talked to a friend of mine named Dr. Kendra Leonard, who runs something called the Silent Film Sound and Music Archive. And if you want to look at a lot of this stuff without going to a library, go to SFSMA, sfsma.org, and she has uploaded hundreds of PDFs of these scores, cue sheets, and the scores themselves. So the cue sheets would be, for, let's say, a feature film would be 5 pages of music, but it would just be the first 10 bars. And it would indicate, when you see this, play this piece of music for a minute and a half. And when you see this happen, play this piece for a minute. And you were supposed to either have this, or you could tell if this is a minor waltz, okay, I'll substitute something else. But because when the war ends and everybody comes back, to me, I feel like this is the one time women who were musicians had an opportunity to perform, and that's why it not only meant more to them, because the men who were musicians could do something else. And I would say 90% of the time when people come up to me and say that they have a relative who played piano or organ in silent movies, it's always their grandmother, their great aunt. It's rare, I'll hear my uncle played the trumpet in the pit orchestra and that sort of thing. So there is a lot of this music, and it's findable either at Lincoln Center or online. Okay, one more question.
Okay.
Before we... Yes.
Right. Okay, well, we'll take, Victoria's going to say something, but we'll also take that gentleman over
Okay,
there,
so 2 more questions.
But
I'll talk fast.
perfect.
Yes, okay.
And Ben, what's the origin of your interest in silent film?
Which interesting silent film is that?
No, just in general.
Oh.
What set this on fire?
Yeah. How did I get started? I am told by my mom that I discovered Charlie Chaplin on TV when I was a toddler. In the 1960s, when I was growing up, they used to show silent comedies as kids programming or filler. There was the Charlie Chaplin Comedy Theater, Who's the Funny Mans, and many of these television packages. These films were in the public domain. Music was slapped onto them, and they were shown. So there's a way to find them. The films were shown, like I said, on public television. In the early 1970s, there were 2 seasons of something called the Silent Years, and these were new restorations produced by Paul Killiam, scored by William Perry, and restored by Carl Malkames. And that was another way to see them. In the 1960s and 70s, it was hard to see more silent film unless you knew somebody or mowed lawns and bought 8mm copies from a company called Black Hawk Films, which is something I did. And when I got a paper route, boy, then I could buy feature films, you know. But I also, at age 12, was given a copy of a brand new book called The Silent Clowns by Walter Kerr. And I devoured it. I'm 12 years old, and my dad remembers that not only does Walter and his wife Jean Kerr from Please Don't Eat the Daisies, as many other things like that, they lived in our town, and that Walter Kerr had a huge film collection. And so I wrote him a letter telling him of my interest in silent films and wanting to see more, and a few days later he called. And for the next, 10, 15 years, because he's a theater critic for the New York Times, on Monday nights, because it was dark night, I would go to his house. And he would say, well, what do you want to see? And so I arrived at film school, having seen all of Chaplin's films, Keaton, Lloyd, Langdon, even Raymond Griffith. And I wind up at film school. I start playing for film classes there. I'm playing for classes taught by William K. Everson, one of the great film historians and preservationists. I meet a guy named Lee Irwin, who was a film organist in the 1920s. And it's just, and at some point, maybe 25 years ago or so, I realized that of all the things that I was trying to do, sketch comedy, improv, stand-up, piano tuning, tech support, silent film accompaniment was the easiest thing to get booked for. And so I leaned into that, and it's gradually snowballed and becomes what I do. It was the path of least resistance, and it almost feels like with the writing and publishing of this book that this is something I'm supposed to be doing. I just keep encountering people like the people I've spoken about before, as well as Eileen Bowser, who is the head of the Film Archive at MoMA, and as well Janine Basinger, who is somebody who is a generation or so up from me, who sees my interest and says yes. So that's it in a nutshell. Yes, and there was one last question.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Both an entertaining and an educational evening.
Thank you.
Obviously, you have spent a lot of time both scoring and improvising music for these. What is your hope for your music? Are you actually recording these? I don't know if there's trademark issues to have them accompany the specific films that you are accompanying. What is your vision on that?
Oh, yeah. So you won't be allowed out until you sign a whole bunch of papers tonight. You're sworn to secrecy. I'm not really sure. What I have begun doing over the last, maybe 15, 20 years, I've been recording a lot of my performances. I started out bringing a mini disc recorder, remember those, to my shows and recording my scores either for reference or whatever, because there is so little that is either survives or is accessible that my mentor and friend Lee Irwin recorded. And he's one of my ideals. He was a huge friend, a great friend and supporter of what I was doing, and there isn't a lot of his recordings. So when I find something like that, I hang on to it. So in the event anybody wants to listen, I have a lot of recordings, and so I do record my scores now. Some of that gets used. I'll use a 3 or 4 minute clip on my podcast as examples. The rest of it, there are scores I've recorded for home video releases, and it's an endless game of whack-a-mole. Myself, as well as a number of other film distributors and film accompanists, we are constantly either policing or being told by somebody we know, here's a couple of links, somebody put your thing up on YouTube, and some people, okay, whatever, but I just had something yanked a couple days ago. People don't understand that, yes, maybe the film is in the public domain, but the score is not. I mean, they'll not only rip it, but put it back up with my credit that says at the bottom, copyright, do not reproduce without. So it's difficult, and there's only so much you can do. But the idea for me is to keep showing up at doing live shows. The recorded scores are great, but as you've no doubt experienced tonight, there is also a difference between seeing a silent film with a recorded score and having the experience of having the live music, because out of the corner of your mind also, you're aware there's a human being playing that music. Even if I'm playing, a digital instrument that's all samples, you're still aware there's somebody in the room with you. So the idea is to continue to do live accompaniments as much as possible and help other people present shows like that, or to help them find accompanists in their area, so that instead of running a Blu-ray with the track, they're having it with live music on piano or on theater organ. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you'd like to find out more about all the different things I do, I am on all sorts of social media at Silent Film Music, and my website, silentfilmmusic.com. You can find out about my YouTube channel, where you will find all 102 episodes of the Silent Comedy Watch Party. Oh, some of you watched a weekly live stream silent film show that I did during the pandemic, with over 260 silent comedy shorts on my YouTube channel, my podcast, my involvement as the archivist for the Ernie Kovacs television collection, again on my email list, and on and on. Books are on sale in the back. If you like the paper kind, that's great. It's available on Kindle. For those of you watching at home, thanks for zooming along. Please take out your phones and buy the book. I'm happy to sign it at the back and answer more questions. But again, I want to thank everyone here at the General Society of Mechanics and Tradesmen in the city of New York, and for all of you coming out during your dinner hour to this presentation. Thank you so much.
Wow. Ben, we want to express our appreciation for this really fantastic presentation, your infinite knowledge. I mean, being able to answer a question about Japanese silent movies, that was so impressive. And also, well, your insights into the magic of silent movies. And I also want to reinforce to everyone, this wonderful book is for sale, and you can purchase it through Lisa and Matthew at the back of the room, and Ben will sign it for you. What a wonderful holiday gift. That's what I think. Yes, thank you. So, again, our appreciation, and of course your wonderful piano playing.
Thank you.
My goodness, Buster Keaton was even enhanced by your wonderful train music.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And now to say a few final words is Victoria, our Executive Director.
So those of you not familiar with us will often, Karen always leaves me with little to say because she covers everything so beautifully. So I think for tonight, I'll just say ditto to Karen's remarks. Ben, that was so much fun. That was so entertaining. So thank you for bringing your music, your intelligence, your wit to this room. And as Ben was preparing, and we had all of the music of the time on, my thoughts went back to that there was a period of time when this room was filled with that music, and it was just such a happy thought. So thank you so much. And I want to thank Jimmy Fricage for the decorations. Yes, I have to say, and if you go upstairs, you'll see it. If anyone stood still long enough just a couple of days ago, you would have been strung with lights. He bought every light from CVS. So again, and thank you to our audience, to everyone who came out tonight. It means so much to us. We have a really devoted audience. So thank you, and to our at-home audience. And finally, I just did want to say to Karen Taylor, who curates our series. And again, I don't know who's new to coming here tonight. So, well, I hope you come back. We take on all kinds of topics here. You know, we'll teach you a new way to look at New York in ways you never saw before. It could be everything from historic preservation, buildings all over town. I'm a native New Yorker. I love New York. And we take on, yes, polarizing topics like pigeons, love them or love them. You would have left loving those pigeons, but anyway, we can't wait to see you again. A very happy holiday season to everyone. Thank you so much.
good night. Please join us for a glass of wine and some cookies while you purchase a book. Thank you very much.